and welcome to Deep NBA Podcast. My name's Sean, and joining me for the first time is Gary from Hoops and Cards. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sean. What's up? It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. And this is obviously the next seat in the big game we're playing here at the Deep 2, saying who's going to replace Dante. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Dude, I don't know if anybody can replace Dante. I listened to some of your shows and the chemistry back and forth, the way you guys just riff. I love it. I think it translates everywhere that NBA fans exist. So thanks for what you guys do. Hoops and Cards. Man, the sports card industry, the craze has hit the NBA, and the last 3 years really with Zion and Ja, and it's just been quite a ride, man. So our podcast has been around almost 2 years now, and it's been fun to meet people from all over the world. A lot of listeners in Australia too, which has been sweet.
Yeah, nice. Well, I've definitely got into basketball cards in the past couple of years. I remember when I was in high school, I found this eBay seller who would just sell vintage sealed basketball packs, and these are vintage, around the Michael Jordan era, so just in the 90s, and they were very weighable in terms of if there was a foil card in there. They definitely weren't selling that on eBay for $2 a pack. But I just thought it was amazing, just opening up these relics of the past. And, you would open up a Bimbo Coles card and it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then from there, I've started to say, oh, there's actually a little bit of value in this. Oh, if you get a rookie card for a good player, there's something going on. And just as soon as that clicked in my head, it happened for the rest of the world. And then, I thought, hey, maybe I'll buy a pack, try and get Jerami Grant, but seems like everyone else has had that idea. I mean, at the time I was saying Zion Williamson because we didn't know that he was going to have an up and down start to his career. But where do you want to go with this?
Well, I've always been an NBA fan, Sean. Like as a kid, you mentioned vintage. I'm that kid that when I was 10 or 12 years old, I just was enamored with sports cards and trying to make money buying and selling baseball cards with my friends and with local shows and shops. And I remember one weekend there was a card show, like hundreds of dealers selling cards. And one guy just had a stand with 40 or 50 sets of 1986-87 Fleer basketball. And this was in 1987. And basketball cards were worth nothing. They were worth nothing. But I was an NBA fan. I loved Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, Magic, Bird, all those. I thought, well, I'm just going to buy a set. It was $7, Sean. $7 for a set of 86, 87 players. So I bought a set and just, pasted those cards in my locker at school, on the wall in my bedroom. It was just like a fun thing. I never thought these things would be worth regret, man. But now the last few years, when COVID hit, we couldn't go to sporting events, we couldn't bet on games, we couldn't do fantasy basketball, so people started buying cards again and returning to their like if they're over the age of 30, they were returning to their childhood buying cards. If they're younger, it's their parents, or just the fact that they could get cards, like you said, with Ja Morant on them and the players that they love watching on TV, Steph Curry, LeBron, all those guys. So yeah, it's taken off, and it's been quite a ride, because along with that, so have podcasters and online platforms and tools to help people try to buy and sell sports cards, basketball cards, and make money real quickly. Like when I got back into it, I could buy a LeBron James card from 2019 for $1 on eBay. And then 2 months later, I was selling it for $20. I'm like, this could be a thing. Like this could be not just money. This could be a profitable thing that I could tell my wife about. It's not just this side hobby for a sports fan. So no, it's been fun to watch it take off.
Yeah, awesome. And I feel like now's a good time to mention, when I was sort of getting a little bit more into basketball cards, we've sort of mentioned a little bit, we know that the rookie cards are the good ones. So obviously, if you want to buy a Michael Jordan rookie card, by all means, go out and do that if you've got the money to do it. But if you do want to sort of have an investment and say, oh, I really like this dude, let's say you like Nikola Jokic in the second round a few years ago, you would be quite wealthy right now if you knew that and bought up all his stock. But when the Chicago Bulls drafted Pat Williams, I thought, this is weird. He's a very raw prospect. He doesn't look that good. He wasn't starting for Florida State. why have they drafted him fourth? His rookie cards were quite cheap at the time, so I thought, I'll take a flyer here because there must be some reason why the Bulls have drafted him. And I said to my mates at the time, I've bought a couple of Pat Williams cards. I think they're around about $10. I've bought some, I'm essentially buying stock in Pat Williams. And he hasn't panned out too well, but instead of shying away from it, I have grown the collection. So now I've
Nice.
now I've got a massive collection of Pat Williams cards. I'll just show you a couple here on the screen. So rookie cards upon rookie cards of Pat Williams, most of them base, but some of them not base Pat Williams cards. All these ungraded. There's a couple of base, there's a couple of base, so on and so on. And then I've got a graded Pat Williams rookie card right here.
Yes,
All worth not much money, but just nice little joke. But if he does end up having the Kawhi Leonard-esque leap, I'm gonna come back to everyone who started laughing at me when I started buying Pat Williams cards. But
you're in a good position. Yeah,
I'm in a great position and a terrible position.
Well, at least you didn't spend a lot of money on them. But that's part of the beauty right now of cards is you can get in on just about any player at a low budget, like a low cost, whether it's the card or the time of the year that you're buying cards or prospecting like you with Patrick Williams. I think that's great. He's quite a tease though, man. He'll have one game where he's like 20 points and 10 boards, and then the next 3 games he disappears. Like with a lot of young players. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean, last week I was messaging the group chat again, talking about Pat Williams, saying, he's closing at the end of the game. He just hit 2 threes to finish off the game. Maybe Billy Donovan's going to trust him a bit more, but you just, let's not worry about that. But one thing I really like with basketball card, like you mentioned there, is prospecting. And I just, you don't have to give up all your secrets, but who are some of the guys who, some of the names out there who, if you were looking to get into investing in basketball cards, who's like a name that you could invest in?
Yeah, the thing I love about prospecting is guys on a guys that you can get into on a lower budget, and you and I have the benefit of we're not just into cards, because a lot of people that do sports cards, they do all the sports and they track with the big names because it's hard for them to keep up on the guys that might be rising or the guys that might get new opportunities in the NBA. We're basketball fans, so we know about players. This is how I made some money and then reinvested it over the last few years would be Darius Garland, buying low, and now I've got a bunch of his cards, but selling a lot of those. Tyrese Maxey, Desmond Bane, Anthony Simons. You guys are familiar with some of those names. Those aren't new names, but the fact that all of those players are scoring more than 20 a game when they get a chance, and Tyrese Halliburton might make the All-Star team. We find out today, there's some of those, but when you say prospecting, I'm guessing you mean guys we haven't heard of yet, right?
Well, I mean, I was listening to your pod last week and I heard the name Jalen Noel. So I'm like, how much is that going to cost? And is it worth the grade to actually send him off?
Jalen Noel is one of the kinds of players like Emmanuel Quickley that can score when he gets the opportunity, has the ball in his hand. They like to run the offense through him. He's in a position where he's behind an established star. So what you want to do is look for players before they get awesome, like before they get the big opportunity, which could happen if during the trade deadline, some of these players get moved, like a Bones Hyland, these guys that when they have minutes, they produce. And it's not just against backups. Like you said, you notice which guys are, hey, if Patrick Williams is closing the game and doing well, that's what Emmanuel Quickley did the other night against the Lakers. He was on the line, he was on the court for the Knicks basically the fourth quarter and overtime and scored 17 points. I'm like, man, when that guy gets a full-time role somewhere, whether it's with Thibodeau in New York or somewhere else, he has the potential. I'm not saying I guarantee. I mean, I can't guarantee you Jalen Noel will ever be more than 15, 20 minutes a game. But when he gets his chances, man, the dude can score. And so he's one of those low cost guys that I like to build a stack of just in case, just in case they take off. So
just in case microwave scorers.
Yes. I mean, last year for me, it was Anthony Simons. He had that talent, but last season when Lillard went down, There was a month or 6 week stretch where Simons was the man and averaging close to 30 a game. And that's why they gave him that big contract. But like, he has that potential to score 30, like he had 26 last night. So I'm looking for guys before they become established stars.
And another question, you're the expert here. Obviously, you're buying these guys, and then if, let's say, it is Jalen Noel who goes to a different situation, let's say he's a 30-point per game scorer, obviously his card's going to go up in value. But in terms of like the much more micro scale, do you see cards go up in value overnight? Like you mentioned Tyrese Halliburton. If you've got a Tyrese Halliburton card today, and then we probably should record this a couple of hours from now when we know the reserves, but
right.
let's say he is a reserve and he's going to be a first-time All-Star in a couple of hours. Will his card go up 25% overnight, or is it that noticeable or not?
On one hand, the answer is it depends on the card, because you could buy just a regular, what in the sports card world we call the base card, the card they made the most of for each set, like a base prism or a base, in your Patrick Williams, I saw Mosaic, I saw Hoops, I think there was a Flux, you had some prism probably. I would look for cards with some of these. Well, some of these you can get a card with a player's autograph on it, or a limited edition card, like numbered to 99, or they only made 50 of that cards. It's not just the player we'd be watching; it's what card are you getting, because it is those limited edition, or it is those with something special to the card. You've got one that's graded, like a PSA 10 is going to be more desirable, and there's a way to track. That's the other thing, man, Sean. The last few years, there have been more tools made for people to track the number of sales of cards online and how much those cards are going for. There's more tools than ever. So like Card Ladder Pro or Market Movers app, you can go on and see, hey, how many Tyrese Maxey Silver Prisms have sold in the last week? What have they sold for? And it helps you kind of anticipate. You can look back and see the last year. Did those cards move quicker when he played better? Did they move slower during the off season? And with Halliburton, I would say the secret's already out. Like, a lot of the Halliburton lovers have already invested in him. But if you've got a unique card that sometimes might trade, like buy and sell along a range, like somebody might buy it for $50 and then he has a big game. Dude's got to get healthy. He has a big game. Then you might have somebody make an impulse buy and buy it on eBay for $100. That's the thing. There are impulse buyers, and I encourage myself not to be one of those, but they're out there, and they will buy based on big news. Ooh, Julius Randle made the All-Star team again. Boom. Some of his cards will sell. I can't guarantee that mine will sell, but there are impulse buyers out there, and more access to them due to things like eBay and online auctions. Does that answer your question? Like with Halliburton, I love his game, but I don't think he's going to make the All-Star. I think he's deserving of it, but there's so many players like having career years right now. It's crazy how much scoring is going on.
Yeah, definitely. And Halliburton seems like a bit of a safe one as well. If he's not an All-Star this year, he's probably going to be an All-Star for the next 5 years. For the forever 6-seeded Indiana Pacers for the rest of eternity.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you never get Emmanuel Quickley hitting 5 threes in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden you've just quickly listed all your Quickley cards, pardon the pun, on eBay.
Unless it's in the playoffs. Like last season, there were a couple guys. Grant Williams for the Celtics had one of those 5 threes in a game, and he was huge. Boom! Grant Williams' prices went up. It's like Terrence Mann the previous year. Terrence Mann comes in for Kawhi, hits 25 points in a playoff game, and you do have those spikes. A couple years ago, it was Bol. Like he had a great preseason, and everybody was talking about him. So I think like with sports cards, the market is drawn to big news and big potential, like big hype.
And Bol's a good name there. What else we got here? Any recommendations? Oh, have I already asked you that? God, must be early for you and
That's
late for
right.
me. Any recommendations for listeners who obviously you've
Sure.
got a basketball podcast, so you've got a sports card podcast, so it's a great resource to go to. But any recommendations outside of listening to Hoops and Cards for people wanting to get into sports cards?
Thanks. Hey, thanks for the plug, Sean. Yeah. We have a series on our podcast called Basketball Cards 101. And it's for people that are brand new to this. You know, you're an NBA fan. You love staying connected and following your team or your favorite player. You love collecting stuff. Maybe it's jerseys, you know, or autographs. Well, Basketball Card 101, that series we do, is super helpful if you're getting into cards for the first time or getting back into the hobby now that it's become a big money business. And you don't have to pay the stupid tax. Like, you don't have to learn a lot of things the hard way and lose money on this. That would be part one. You can learn the things before you spend the money. Part two would be no matter what you hear from talkers about sports cards as an investment. I like what you said about Halliburton. If you buy a card now, you know, and it doesn't go up or you don't get to sell it and make some profit right away, so what? Tyrese Halliburton's going to be a great player for many years to come. And if you enjoy his game, then why not buy his card now and enjoy the ride? You know, if you've got a card that you really like. Does that make sense? Like, I always think about that. Like, hey, if the card market crashes tomorrow, will I still want to keep that card? Or am I just buying it on the quick flip? And because you never know, right? We talked about the rise of the card market 2 or 3 years ago with COVID. Well, the last 12 months, we've seen it return, like crash back down to planet Earth. And a lot of people that were in it for the quick dollar, quick buck, they're like, oh crap, what did we just do? You know, they've had to sell a lot and take a loss. So yeah, buy players you like, you know, if you're into this. And it is good to listen to podcasts like yours, podcasts like mine, to stay in touch with what's going on in the NBA. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And links to everything you do will be in the bio of this podcast. And you can also just search Hoops and Cards wherever you get your podcast. But before we move on to just the news of the week, because it is the trade deadline next week, so there is plenty to talk about. Who do you follow in the basketball? Who's your team?
Well, my home team is Cleveland. So I love what the Cavaliers have done. Like adding Donovan Mitchell, that's just ridiculous what he's been able to do. It's been fun because the last couple of days I've looked into, as we put together our list of who should be all-stars. I looked at what all the players in the league are doing the last 10 games, and Evan Mobley has been starting to score. He's averaging 19.9 a game over the last 10. That's super encouraging for people that are like, I know he can block shots, but can he, right? What's his potential as a scorer? So I'm Cleveland. As far as like fan and collecting, I love Memphis.
Yeah.
So many young, exciting players. I love Toronto. I'm curious to see what they do at the deadline, if anything. They're in all these rumors.
I mean, maybe they can trade for another like long rangy wing who's athletic and can shoot.
That's right. They have such a shortage of those. Yeah, it's like watching 5 clones on the court, and I don't know how they're not winning. Like they've got guys that can do the things, and they were winning last year. But anyway, I like Toronto. I love the Sixers. I mentioned Darius Garland, but also Tyrese Maxey is a guy that I started buying when he was cheap, and I've made a good chunk of money, you know, relatively good chunk of money selling his cards, but I've got a lot on him. They look pretty good too. The Sixers, you see what they did to Denver and Jokic last week?
Yeah. On the second night of a back-to-back for the Denver Nuggets, I will
say. That's true.
But I mean, you can only play who's in front of you. So if you're going to beat your MVP candidate and your MVP rival and best center in the world, you're not gonna say no. But yeah, interesting. Right. You're the first Cavs fan. I think I hate to offend anyone, but you're the first Cavs fan to come on the podcast. Yeah. I'm a Golden State fan, so you know maybe I've been keeping Cavs fans away. But I've just ever since those finals.
I was at a bunch of those finals games. Like we have tickets to the Cavaliers, and Yeah, man, those were 4 exciting years, but also 4 heartbreaking years for
Mm.
Cavaliers fans, especially when you guys got KD.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit that wasn't the most fun years to be a basketball fan. Apart from just tuning on a random Tuesday, and then all of a sudden KD is just like, he's just got the full weak side cleared out with the 2 best shooters on the strong side, and he's just sitting there just sizing up some poor rookie
Right?
who's just at work with no
Yeah,
idea
well,
what to
hey,
do.
you would be proud of me, Sean, because on our podcast, I don't just talk about, hey, Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Like, I talk about Steph Curry. I talk about Jordan Poole has been a huge rising star in the sports card market, and
Definitely,
is
yeah.
still a pretty decent buy. But I'm not afraid to recommend players that I can't stand, like
Mm.
Brooklyn Nets players with all their drama, and the Golden State Warriors with the. I have PTSD from those playoff years, man.
No, but this year and last year is the first time I've actually come around to watching Cavs games. I'm usually, if
Okay.
there's anyone else on, I'll usually watch anyone else. But this just Darius Garland is so much fun. It's just so nice
He
to see a
is.
guy who's just like he's got the thing with the hop and he's jumping around and he's got his like cheeky little no looks, and then now you've just got responsible backups behind him where like everything just isn't on him. He can now just have some fun, have an excellent,
Right?
just run an excellent offense, and then sit down and not have to worry about coming back in with the score down like Steph Curry.
Well, I heard another podcaster, Paul from nooffseason.com, about 2 years ago mentioned Darius Garland is the next Steph Curry. And that sounds like ridiculous. You're just trying to get attention by saying that. What if he is? Like when Donovan Mitchell's out, Darius, I almost called him Steph. Darius can go off for like 50. I was at a game earlier this year where he had 51 points. I'm like, this kid's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're just now starting to see what he can do. If Cavs make a playoff run, it's going to be fun to watch. So
Yeah. Oh, he's so much fun to watch, and it's just I hate that he plays with the Cavs, but you've just got such a lovely roster.
right?
And Evan Mobley, like the sky's the limit, really. I mean, everyone said he's got tremendous upside on offense, but even if he doesn't, even if this 19 points across 10 is a flash in the pan, he's a defensive player of the year candidate. Guards, let's say 3 through 5. That's sexy.
Oh, dude. And I remember going to Cavaliers games the year after LeBron left, and the place was, I mean, deserted. It was bare. It was boring. And I felt like I was attending a funeral, honestly, not to be overly dramatic, but after going from finals games to nobody cares, and we're playing guys like Chetty Osman 45 minutes a night, like not maybe 35, but still, then to 4 years later have Darius, Donovan, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Karis LeVert, like Rubio. Players want to come to Cleveland now, and maybe you're getting to the trade deadline. Like my dream is OG Anunoby fitting in at the 3, but that's not going to happen.
I mean, Donovan Mitchell was sitting there talking to the Knicks for almost a month, and then just you woke up one day and it's like, oh, he's actually, maybe he's going to go to the Cavs. Next day it happened. So,
right.
Then again, I also don't know what assets you've got to move. Have you got like a 2029 first you can throw? But Masai Ujiri's only ever asked for the world for OG Anunoby.
I think that's sorry to interrupt you. That is the best part of where we're at in Cleveland. And I mentioned Memphis and Toronto. Some of these teams, you start to realize you're not just following the player, you're following their general manager, who is great at identifying talent and adding pieces around, a superstar core. Memphis has this way of identifying young talent and to put them around Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, and I mean, even Steven Adams, the way he fits when he's healthy, like they are an awesome young team. But it's partially because some brain, some GM knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Kobe Altman, I was quite critical of him early when he came in, but he's done
it around.
He's done an exceptional job. If there was a Paul George for the pick that became Colin Sexton trade on the table, might have taken that, but the hindsight's 2020, and here you are. But before we move on to the news of the week, just to wrap up, let's just take a quick break.
The depth, the deep two. God, that's a mouthful. Anyways, I'm Marco, co-host of the Hey, Daniel Gafford, what's the name of our podcast?
The JVG NBA Tribute Show.
Wow, I can't believe it's that easy. Thanks, Gaff. You probably know us as two members of the Four-Man Weave plus Marco, but we know you as our next listener.
Well said, Lucas. I gotta ask, how do we differ from the Pack of Basketball podcasts?
It's a great question, Marco. You see, on our basketball podcast, we have two male co-hosts.
Wow, truly groundbreaking. After this episode, stay on your favorite podcasting app and give us a spin.
And we are back. I have put the Pat Williams cards under lock and key. I'm sure we've grabbed some refreshments, and back we are to run through some of the major news for the week. And I'll start off with the first one coming from Jason Quick of The Athletic, reporting that Jerami Grant is going to wait until the offseason to sign an extension. The Portland Trailblazers reportedly offered him a $412.6 million extension, which he turned down. And following this declined extension, a few teams started calling around to see if he was available. And what are your thoughts, Gary, when you heard this report?
I hope the Cleveland Cavaliers are one of those teams that called. If Jerami Grant's available, he adds so much to a team. Defense, can play at multiple positions. As far as sports cards, like that's where I feel like I think he's undervalued for a 2014 rookie that you can find for just a few dollars. But yeah, I wouldn't run out to buy Jerami Grant cards either. He's not a big name,
Definitely. Well, on the court, if you say the Cavs are interested, if you would like the Cavs to be interested, do you think he can slide into that 3-and-D role? Do you think he could, say take over Karras in the closing lineup?
I think they would play matchups that way because Karras is good at creating his own shot, and I haven't given up on him yet. So I think he would take over the place where when you've seen Isaac Okoro or Chetty Osman or Lamar Stevens, all those guys are okay, but Jerami Grant's a star. Like he's played at an all-star level for a couple years now. Because he was in Detroit, which plays Cleveland pretty frequently. We got to see him up close and be like, man, Portland got a good deal getting him. I don't know why they'd want to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I thought when I saw the report. It's like, okay, well, Portland have only said that they're going to compete. They've only said that they want to put a contender around Damian Lillard, and if you're going to trade away Jerami Grant on an expiring contract, you're not going to get anything back that's actually going to be worth it. So
right.
I thought this was more Jerami Grant's agent coming out there saying, okay, look, we couldn't sign an extension. Teams are definitely interested, which means if there's teams interested at the deadline, we're going to have suitors in free agency. And it wouldn't be the first time Jerami Grant's betted on himself. And you must think he's feeling pretty rosy after the Detroit experience where everyone's like, that's incredible. He should have stayed with Denver on $12 million a year. Why would he just cash out for 20? Oh, well, maybe he's actually worth 25. So, yeah, more power to him if he wants to bet on himself. I think, because he was. Now this is just going to sound uneducated, but I think because he was an all-star in the past 2 seasons. Was he? Yeah, he was. I think
he played like one. Yeah. I don't know if he actually was, but yeah.
He's eligible for, I think it's a little bit north of $200 million over across 5 years in an extension. But that seems a little bit rich for my blood. You've seen him in person. So do you think he's worth it, or what would you do?
I don't think he's worth that. No, I do think Portland should try to keep him at whatever budget they can because they've got a decent core of 5 or 6 players that they just need to play together more. And to see the way Damian Lillard, I don't know if you saw him last night, he just explodes for 40. It seems like every time he takes the court. So Jerami Grant's one of those guys that's fine if you need him to score 25 or 30. He's fine if you don't. Like he'll still impact the game, rebounds, defense, whatever. So
yeah,
you need those guys around your stars.
I still think his best case scenario is what he did for Denver in the bubble, playing the Aaron Gordon role, which, maybe Aaron Gordon's doing a little bit better now, but just coming in, like you said, defense, rebounds, and hit the shots that come to him. Would have liked to see Boston trade for him last year. He would have been a very interesting fit there. But then again, as a Warriors fan, maybe I didn't want to see him do that. Probably the sexiest piece of news we got here is that Bones Hyland is, quote, likely to be traded by the deadline. This is coming from Mark Stein in one of his many news dumps. Have you been reading Mark Stein's news dumps? It seems like every morning I wake up, he's just got 5 new dudes, rumors, updates. I don't even know there's this many players in the league, but he's finding rumors for every single one. The Bones Hyland report was followed up by Adam Mares of Locked On Nuggets and DNVR, saying that the trade comes a little bit because there is a new front office in there, and Kelvin Booth wasn't the guy that drafted him, and also a little bit that there's been conflict between him and Michael Malone, the head coach, obviously, and not in a bad way, in more of a role and playing time, which. My first thoughts when I heard that was, you're a second-year guard on a title contender. You're probably not going to be getting that many minutes. But just I thought it was a little bit interesting that, let's say Bones Hyland has always been available this season, and Kelvin Booth doesn't think he's the ingredient to a title team here. You don't usually hear reports that they are likely to trade him and that they are having such advanced discussions to get rid of a guy like this. So, well, what do you make of that when they're actually reporting that the guy on his rookie deals on the move?
Yeah, I was shocked to hear his name and to see it on our list of things to talk about, just because, again, like you said, young player, rookie contract, a guy that seems to fit what they do. Really well with or without Jamal Murray on the court. He can drain threes. He plays with energy. You love that coming off your bench. You love that just anywhere on the court to see a guy that plays like Bones does. So I was surprised. And I'm skeptical that he'll actually get moved. I don't know if it's just the new brain trust over there in Denver needs to be convinced, but I'm shocked to hear his name.
Yeah, definitely. I'm shocked to hear it as well. So you keep going.
Well, with sports cards, we talked earlier about trying to find players before they take off and become stars or household names, and there are very few guys in last year's class who have shown the explosiveness as a player and a scorer that Bones Hyland has. With Jamal Murray out, I think probably the bigger piece of the puzzle here is that Jamal Murray's back healthy and playing great. Like Jamal is on I had him as a alternate or a last addition to the Western Conference All-Stars. I think he's one of the main reasons Denver is tops in the West right now. He's playing really well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with you. Like there doesn't seem to be much of a reason why he is on the trade market. So I think it really does just come down to what is that conflict between he and Michael Malone, because it must be pretty bad if you're going to trade away a guy who's cost controlled for this year and 2 more afterwards. And if he's worth an extension, you've just got, he's going to be a restricted free agent. So it is weird to see. They did put quite a high asking price on Bones Hyland. They said they wanted a first round pick and a defensive player in return, which is like, he was a late first round pick, and let's say he's definitely increased his stock. Still, you'd say a middle of the round first round pick is about what he might be worth, in my opinion, anyway. So I wonder what the price is going to be. Minnesota have expressed interest. Obviously, the link there with Tim Connolly. He was the guy who drafted him when he was in Denver. But I don't see much that Denver would be interested in receiving back for.
Sean, what's your take on Minnesota? Like they've got just what are the T-Wolves doing? They have, they went all in for Rudy. They're returning playoff team. What's your take on why would they be interested in Bones for what he could do on the court, and what are they doing? What do you see Minnesota doing to improve their team?
Bones, I think it's more just talent acquisition. I think Tim Connolly sees a guy who he identified when he was there, and he drafted him, so he must have believed in him. And I'd just rather play a young up and coming guard than someone like Austin Rivers. Just get more young talent in there. But yeah, Minnesota as a whole, it's been pretty depressing, especially as someone who, when I did my over-unders at the start of the year, I picked them to potentially go over 50 wins, just because I thought you put Rudy Gobert anywhere, you've got a top 5 defense in the league, and it doesn't matter if Anthony Edwards doesn't care about defense, or D'Angelo Russell might just be a league average point guard, or can Cat guard anyone, especially if it's not if it's not a 5? I said, don't worry about all those questions. They're massive, blaring questions, but don't worry because Rudy Gobert is going to fix it. And he was just he just seems a step slow on defense and just a tiny little bit worse than he has been with the Utah Jazz. And I definitely gave too much credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves and not enough credit to the Utah Jazz for just having a solid defensive foundation. And Chris Finch is in there as an offensive, not offense only, but offense mostly head coach there. And yeah, so it's a little bit unfortunate that I bought so hard into the T-Wolves. I think
we all did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I tell you, Dante didn't.
Oh really? I was gonna say their talent is ridiculous. Like Gobert, Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, McDaniels. Like they're loaded. And what did they took the Grizzlies to 6 or 7 games last year? Like they're. But I don't know what's going on. Like Towns hasn't been healthy a lot this season, and you're right, Gobert hasn't been what they thought they got. When you've got guys like Naz Reid who can come off the bench and do pretty much the same thing or better, did we really? I'm surprised would they give up 6 first-round picks for Rudy, or was it 5?
Yeah, well, it turns out to be 6 once you factor in Walker Kessler, who's looking
and
better
Kessler's playing great.
Yeah, and imagine just having Walker Kessler. Like if you really wanted to test the theory of Cat next to a defensive 5, you could have just drafted Walker Kessler if you believed in the scouting of him being just a good ground-bound big. Have him cost controlled for 4 years and go, okay, it doesn't look too good with Cat, or it does. Then you can make the trade. But the fact that Tim Connolly came in and just focused on getting stars, which I completely understand, but just maybe the worst fitting star they could have gotten. And there's a video you can watch on our YouTube channel on the film room, done by Lukas where he looks at just how the hell they can get things to work on offense.
Interesting.
Still works, that video, still very clickable, because while at the time both of the big guys were healthy, we still don't have any answers because they got unhealthy. But I think it's a little bit awkward that Anthony Edwards is playing the best basketball of his year without one of those guys there. And Cat was excelling a bit in the games that Gobert wasn't there. And Gobert misses every second game, and I pick up Naz Reid as a streaming option on Yahoo Fantasy, and I'm happy, but I'm just not too happy with the situation.
Well, don't give up on Anthony Edwards, and I don't think you are. Like 25 points a game right now, and the kid is 21 years old. Like he is emerging. I did have him as an all-star, and the last 10 games he's averaging 31 or 32. Like, he's awesome. He's a fantastic young player, and maybe this is going to be part of Minnesota changing of the guard from being a team that was trying to build around Karl Towns because he's good, but they need to become like the team that's building around Edwards, right? And what the game is becoming, not what it used to be with a bunch of big guys. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had a point, but I completely forgot about it. Oh, well, let's go back to Bones Hyland. Something Minnesota. I saw a fake trade proposed by someone on Twitter, so no credit given. Terrence Mann for Bones Hyland. Do you like that for those teams? And who would you say says no?
I love it if I'm the Clippers, because they have a bunch of those Terrence Mann 2, 3, 4 guys. That's where their strengths lie with Paul George, with Norm Powell, with even Kawhi. Like they've got those guys, but if they could add another young, John Wall's been up and down. If they can add somebody like Bones to give life and come off the bench like he does in Denver, I don't know why they pass on that. And he's a lot younger than Terrence Mann. Nothing against Terrence Mann. He's the Clippers seem to have a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like it for Denver?
No.
Really?
No, I don't.
Damn.
I don't. You're surprised now, aren't you?
Yeah, I absolutely adore this trade for both teams, because everything you mentioned there for the Clippers makes sense. But the theory of, if they are going to win a title, it's because Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player in the world again. So if you've got Kawhi just posting up, getting a mismatch or just getting an advantage against the defense, if you can just swing to Bones Hyland, who just wants to take shots off the dribble and off the catch, as opposed to John Wall, who needs to find the guy for the pass, that's amazing. But Terrence Mann, just like another interchangeable wing. You know, you say the Clippers have too many. Well, Denver don't have enough of these guys.
So here's why I don't like it for Denver. I feel like they would be overpaying for Terrence Mann. I think you need to give me something more. Like if you told me it was Terrence Mann and Brandon Boston Jr. for Bones Hyland
and the needle for you.
For Bones Hyland and a pick, yeah, it does. Just because Boston is something else, he's a young player with talent. He's a Kentucky kid. I want a little, because I do see Bones as more value right now. Like I said, younger player, scorer, higher potential than Mann. But I do see what you're saying, Mann fitting as an athletic wing that Denver does need more of. Like they do need. They would love his defense. I think that part of it makes sense. I just don't love overpaying for him.
Yeah, I think when you get to that stage where you're Denver, I think you do have to overpay a little bit, because you are such a nearly complete team where, you know, they could win the title at the end of the year and we'll all be like, okay, that's fair enough. But, you know, if you're bringing in Terrence Mann, who might play 10 minutes in a playoff game, whereas Bones Hyland, if Jamal Murray is going to play 40 something, Bones Hyland, he's definitely not in there for his defense. And if you've got Jokic and Murray running everything, you don't really need him for his offense. I think overpaying a little bit just to get those extra few minutes and that little extra edge in the playoffs is definitely worth it. But you might look back on it in a year if you haven't won a title and gone, oh crap, well, there goes that really young scorer.
Imagine those two teams meeting each other like in the Western semifinal again, and having that. Both those players could play a key role. You know, and have an axe to grind if they end up going against their former team. So,
and I laughed a little bit before when you said Brandon Boston, because every national podcast I listen to, everyone's like, "Oh, can the Clippers make a move?" And then you go, "Okay, well, what picks do the Clippers have to move?" And it's like, "Okay, well, yeah, seems like most of these big teams, 2029 pick. Oh, that's a little bit too far in the future. It might be a little bit too valuable to swing for just a role player." What about Brandon Boston Jr.? And it's like, I've never seen Brandon Boston Jr. play a lot of basketball. I mean, I've seen him play, but I'm not sitting there going, get him on my team, he's an asset. But have you seen something I haven't?
He's like buying a lottery ticket, man. He is feast or famine. Last season, there were some games where there was no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard, and they threw Brandon Boston in a starting capacity. And sometimes
you're telling me there's a Clippers game with no Paul George and no Kawhi Leonard,
right?
What are you talking about?
What am I smoking?
Street clothes Leonard.
So he probably had a couple games, Brandon Boston did, where he got 25 or 30 or more. And so it was sort of this reminder of like, man, any given night, the NBA is so loaded with talent. You know, some of these guys just need a chance. And Boston is still, I think he's under 20 years old. So it'd be just like taking a flyer. Yeah. You know, it's not like I'm saying, oh, he's going to come in and make a difference for Denver today. No, he's more like, hey,
just a
lottery ticket.
Returning.
Yep, because they're not going to be drafting high in the first round for the foreseeable future. So this would be like, right, like you said, talent acquisition.
All right, and then final piece of the news that was quite interesting is that the Atlanta Hawks are willing to keep John Collins past this trade deadline. That was coming from Mark Stein. And there was also a follow-up report that came out this morning from Sam Amick of The Athletic, saying that the Hawks have also significantly decreased their asking price for John Collins in a trade. Previously, they were looking for a first-round pick, a good first-round pick, and a quality player in return for John Collins, who I don't think he's worth that. And then now they're saying we just want a good quality player in return. I just want the John Collins saga in Atlanta to finish.
That's what I was thinking.
It's just like, it's not even that cool of a saga. It's not like there's massive beef or anything. It's like
we talk about this every year, Sean. Like, what is John Collins on the move? Like, I don't care.
It's like he can't defend the rim, and he can't switch on the perimeter. Just send him to Houston. Houston were a team who actually expressed interest in the past couple of days, which I just think that, I mean, Houston are tanking, so maybe it's good. But you just send him somewhere else, because I want to just see him outside of an Atlanta jersey and see if he can do something different. Because if we pass this trade deadline and he's still there.
Oh man, what I would be curious, what is your ideal situation for him? Because sometimes I hear the Cavaliers as a team mentioned in the John Collins conversation, and I'm like, no. If this guy thinks he's a starter, an impact player on a playoff team, No, he's
Mm,
not. You
mm.
know, he's a like a random scorer on the Atlanta Hawks, right? They're not top 6 in the East or the West.
Mm.
I don't know. I'm like you. I'm ready for the saga to die.
Yeah. Like to answer your question, like what do I think of John Collins? I think he was just in the right place at the right time. He came into an Atlanta team before they had drafted Trae Young, and they had just come out of the Mike Budenholzer era, and they were like, oh, hold on a minute, we're tanking. John Collins, take a bunch of shots, and he easily just averaged 20 points because he's athletic, he can finish, like he's got good hands, but he just simply isn't the driver of an efficient offense. And then they paid him the money because they said we've made this beautiful playoff run. Trae Young's rising, he needs his running mate, but he's just not the driver of an efficient offense, and he's just nowhere near. He can't do anything on defense. Like his arms are too short to defend the paint. That's why he's always paired with the five. But as soon as you pair him with the five, he's not a good enough shooter to like really actually stretch it. So all of a sudden you're a little bit cramped, harder for your guards to get to the rim. So I think like you asked what's his best situation. I think his best situation is in 2026. In the 2026 offseason, his contract expires and he signs like a Bobby Portis like deal for a title contender and accepts a role coming off the bench. But if you were to maximize him, would it be for to Indiana where he's sitting next to Miles Turner, where Miles Turner is a good enough shooter at the five, and then all of a sudden John Collins is the one guy in the paint next to another good passer like Tyrese? But I really don't think the juice is worth the squeeze.
I think he's the backup, man. I think he's as you're talking, I hear these other names in my head: T.J. Warren, Jay Crowder, like guys that are between sizes and they don't play great defense, or they don't anymore. I was going to ask you about Jay Crowder. That's another name that we're hearing in trade deals, and he played for the Cavaliers for a minute or two during that finals run and everything. And I'm like, why are we still talking about Jay Crowder? Like, he had games for Phoenix last year where in the playoffs he would go 0 for 9, 0 for 10. I'm like, why is this dude on the court? You've got Cameron Johnson. I don't know. There's other sagas that I'm like, how is this still a thing?
Yeah, it seems like the name of Jay Crowder has surpassed the actual reality of Jay Crowder, because Dante's a Phoenix Suns fan, obviously watches a lot of Phoenix games, and where as soon as they announced that Cam Johnson was going to be taking over the starting role, he goes, oh, that makes sense. Cam Johnson's a better player. We sort of need an off-ball guy who can just catch and shoot as much as he does with that starting lineup. And then Jay Crowder obviously kicked up a fuss and said, no, I want to start. I'm not joining the team until... But now you're halfway through a season. No one's seen this guy play basketball since the end of last season, where, like you said, he had some stinkers in the playoffs. And you're going to trade, like, if a title contender is going to trade for him, they're going to have to match. That most of the times they're going to be in the luxury tax or up against the hard cap. They're going to have to match or give back more than his $10 million salary. So you're giving up, not pennies. You're giving up something that's like a reason for your basketball team being good. You're giving up more than just a throwaway, a minimum salary. So it's like, are you going to give up a piece of what makes your basketball team good for a guy who hasn't played basketball in 6 months? It's
I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I would be, what players on the move do you think will move the needle? Like, what's a name that excites you that you're like, man, that's a difference maker. If that goes down, dude.
Well, I think the difference maker for me is more like a Derek White move last season with the Boston Celtics. So I see the move that would like actually make things happen would be to, say the Warriors bring in Jakob Poeltl or something like that, where it's like, okay, you've got a dude who's getting paid, just under $10 million a year, who can come in, easily swaps with James Wiseman, I'll mention. And you just get a rotation
That was, you guys
player.
Talked about that on a previous episode, right? Wiseman and some stuff for Poeltl, right?
Yeah, you can take Wiseman and all the stuff, but just bring in a competent rotation player. Like just play. I don't think there's going to be like a Bradley Beal trade that thrusts Miami into superstardom, but I think there's a guy like Jakob Poeltl. You've put me on the spot here, but there is, there must be a guard equivalent as well, where like Derek White, where it's just like, ex-Spurs guys who are just going to come in and play 20 minutes in the playoffs. A little bit like Terrence Mann, but I'm like you. I don't think he's that good to really move the needle. Are there any guys out there that you think can move the needle this deadline?
Well, I mentioned Toronto, and it just seems like they have a lot of pieces that would be attractive, but I don't know what teams are going to step up and pay for a guy like Anunoby or Fred VanVleet. And yet some of these contenders that are in, take Miami or take even Phoenix, like they could really use another rotation guy that can score, right? But I don't know if they're going to pay enough to get a Fred VanVleet. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm so used to now, and you probably are too, as an NBA fan follower, all the hype around. I'm excited. I'm always excited about the trade deadline, and it seems like rarely, do all the things that we think will happen. There's often some great surprises, some deals we didn't expect too, right? As a Cavaliers fan, we've been able to sneak in on other teams' deals, and the big James Harden trade a couple years ago, the Cavs snuck in and got Jarrett Allen, and it was like an add-on team, but Jarrett Allen's turned out to be an all-star. So maybe it's going to be some of the lesser known trades or teams that get in, and you're like surprised by it.
Yeah. I don't think like a Bojan Bogdanovic is just going to like blow up the title race where it's like, oh, okay, well now you've got a really competent forward off the bench. You're the winners. Yeah, I would love to see Fred VanVleet moved. I would love to see whether it is Phoenix just mortgaging their future. Just say, all right, just here's 3 future first-round picks and 2 swaps. Here's Chris Paul as well, and we just bring in Fred VanVleet and make it work. But with Toronto, like they've got all these really attractive pieces, and OG is probably the crown jewel. If you want to get Siakam, just see what he looks like outside of a Toronto jersey. There's all these enticing situations. But what did Toronto do at the end of the day? Because if you're giving up one of those guys, if you give up Fred VanVleet, then it's like, oh well. Are you retooling? Are you tanking? Are you still competing? What's the move there? So I think with Toronto, Masai Ujiri is going to have to ask, if I'm going to do one, if I'm going to trade OG for 3 first-round picks, then is there another piece that I pretty much have to do? But as soon as he does that move, then all the other teams are going to look at Masai and say, well, you've sort of just kind of committed, and now you're in no man's land. So we're not going to pay a premium for Pascal Siakam. So I would love, my dream situation is three Raptors get moved all within seconds of one another.
Blow it up.
To quote Kevin O'Connor for the last it seems like 15 years, just trying to blow up the Toronto Raptors, because I just don't think politically they can move one of those guys and still ask for such a premium on any of the other two. What are your thoughts?
I'm like you. I would love to see the potential of any of those players in another uniform, like develop, because we've heard a lot about, what they can do, but it seems like they always steal shots and attention from each other. We haven't even mentioned Scotty Barnes. They've got 5 or 6 wing players that are super talented, that any given night they can score 30, but none of them, I mean, Pascal's had a great season, but they aren't winning. And that's a problem. And either you say, because I was going to ask you about the Sixers, the whole trust the process thing. Well, the process, if you're a Sixer fan, has taken a decade. Like it's taken a long time to see what drafting Joel Embiid would turn out to possibly be, and they still haven't made it to. Have they made it to a conference finals? But they look good right now. Adding the right pieces around a healthy Embiid and Harden is looking really good. So there may be a case in Toronto of saying, look, you've got the talent, just give it time. Give these guys time to figure it out. And if the right deal comes along, take it. But don't go giving away, a Van Vliet for almost nothing. Make sure you get something, right? At least potential or assets. I hate seeing players leave a team for nothing. When Dallas lost Jalen Brunson for nothing, that was big. Now we're all like, how come Luka doesn't have a supporting cast? Well, they let him go. And he's a borderline all-star. And sometimes you just have to wait for a player to develop, in your own system. So I'm sorry if I rambled too much on 2 other teams there, but like, Toronto, my thought is, man, if they're desperate to blow it up and someone can win an auction for Anunoby or Siakam or Van Vliet, they're going to be glad they did.
Yeah. And what is basketball podcasting if not rambling on about multiple teams afterwards?
That's true. Okay.
You're
used to this. You guys are the king of this, by the way. I love your show, love listening to it. And I feel smarter because of the Australian accent that I get to hear talking about the NBA. I love that that your country is so crazy for NBA basketball. Love it.
It's crazy for sport, really, and it happens to be that the NBA is really good. I was going to wrap up, but I have to say, do you think Australia can win potentially silver or gold in the next Olympics or World Cup in basketball?
Absolutely, Sean. Anything is
correct
possible
answer.
if you believe. Absolutely. Yes. And I wouldn't. I started to think about, man, is the next Olympics just going to go to whoever has Luka, or is Victor Wembanyama going to dominate international basketball for the next 15 years? So, but no, Australia absolutely has a chance and is always well coached, always like works the three. I mean, they're awesome.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, just before we wrap up, I will firstly mention that on the deep2.com, I have to say this. We've got 2 articles up there, one from yours truly, one from me talking about sort of a trade deadline prep for the Golden State Warriors, and then an article that went up today from friend of the program, Matt Parnell, talked about the absurdity of Luka Doncic's season and just the crazy maths behind what the hell he's actually doing. And then, does he need help? What form does that help come in? Or does he actually really need help because he's doing this incredible stuff and he's getting all these wide open shots for his teammates? But I don't want to spoil the lead too much. That's on the deep2.com. I can't believe it's that simple, Gary. And then, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have Gary from Hoops and Cards on the podcast. And just want to give us a quick sign off. Where can people find you? What days do you go live and so on?
Anytime, Sean. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, Instagram at Hoops and Cards. That is the best way to follow what we do and to get into the sports card hobby as it hits the NBA. Our podcast on the BF Pods Network as well. Check that out, Hoops and Cards, anywhere you find podcasts. And like I said, that series, Basketball Cards 101. If you're brand new to this, you just want to hear what's our show about. We did one, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago about, I forget what it was about, but it's really good. It's really good about just getting the foundation and learning the opportunities to buy and sell cards. And it's all global, man. It's all online. So it's been a blast. So yeah, but thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for
anytime
coming on.
You want to talk Golden State and Cavaliers, I'm here.
Well, I think it would be a good matchup to have us in the finals again, but I think for the rest of the league, we probably shouldn't see it.
That could happen.
It could happen.
That could totally happen.
Again.
Yeah.
Well, I'll speak to you when we're in the finals.
Right? I'm glad. Well, man, could you imagine Steph Curry and Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah. Can you imagine Donovan Mitchell and anyone again?
That's true.
Anyway,
Garland in the finals.
I'll speak to you, young Steph Curry. I'll speak to you. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly, with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, 2 steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingads.org.au/get gambling off SBS with hyphens in between.